Hey guys, welcome to the InvestorBet NFL Week 2 betting preview. I'm going to run through all 15 upcoming games. So we've already had one game so far on Friday morning with Buffalo easily beating Miami on the road. Now we got 14 games coming tomorrow, and then the final game of the week between Atlanta and Philadelphia being played on Tuesday. So we're going to go through using the bet finders, go through, analyze each one of these games, go through what I think is going to happen, who's going to win, whether it's going to be high or low scoring, who's probably going to cover the spread. And we're going to do this based on statistical data. Then when we look at player props as well, we're looking at using the bet finders, looking at where teams' strengths and weaknesses are and how we can capitalize on that. Then also which players we want to use to capitalize on that. So in the bet finders, which you guys can all access for the NFL, there's a stack of different tools you can use, but some of the main ones I'm going to go through in this video and use in this video. This right here is the game-by-game matchup. So for example, you have the Chargers at Carolina. Home team always listed second or on the right side in the NFL. And you can see how they match up offensively, passing offense, rushing offense, and then defensively in those same categories, what their averages are, and then where that ranks overall in the league. Now, one thing you might notice is the current statistics we're looking at. So for every sport, which I do this for, I never just start using the current season stats straight away after week one or round one. Until every single team has played 3 games, I use last season's numbers to analyze team performances. Now, obviously things change from season to season, player and personnel changes, team strategies change, etc. However, if you just look at, the 2024 season data and every team's played 1 game, that information can be really, really misleading because depending whether they played a good or bad opponent, depending what the strategy or the makeup of that game was, did one team get out to an early lead so the other side had to rely on a lot of passing to play catch up, or did they get out to an early lead, scored a couple of quick touchdowns, and then they relied on their rush to try and run down the clock. So pretty much point is that just relying on 1 week stats is really misleading. So until every side's played 3 games, which, for the most part, means they'll have played, a couple of average teams and maybe one better or one worse side. So it gives a better indication of their overall performance. So this is the overall performance that we're looking at. Then the next tool is the matchup by position. So how teams defend certain positions. So betting on player props is really awesome in the NFL because there's so many options. It's kind of similar to like the NBA, but in the NFL, like you're betting on passing, number of pass attempts, rushing yards, receiving yards, and then touchdown scorers as well. So there's so many different avenues and options to bet on. So being able to have information to make the right decisions is really important. So here we're looking at where teams are good and bad defensively against different positions. So you'll straight away notice the Chargers are one of the worst pass defense in the league, whereas Carolina last season were actually a top 2 pass defense. However, the caveat to that is Carolina lost a lot of games, so teams didn't really need to throw the ball against them in order to win, and that's why they gave up a lot of rushing yards to the running backs. But also for the Chargers, they don't give up many quarterback rushing. So, there's no real point in this game backing the Carolina quarterback in Bryce Young to generate a lot of yards on the ground against this Chargers defense. However, the Chargers give up a lot of rushing yards to the running back, ranked 16th in the league, and especially a lot of receiving yards to opponent running backs, ranked 30th in the league. So if you can find a play to take advantage of that, then that's a really good opportunity. And you guys get the idea. We can go through this for every game. I'm going to do that in a second. And then when we're deciding, which player we want to go with, we can look at their overall trends and performances, how many passing yards they've thrown week to week, how many touchdowns they've thrown, rushing yards, receiving yards, and then touchdown scorers. So which players scored a touchdown in which week, which players, have been very consistent in scoring touchdowns, etc., etc. And then we have the milestones over here on the side. So what percentage of games did they throw at least 1 passing touchdown? For example, Justin Herbert, 79% across those games. All right, so that's the overview of how we're doing this. So just so you guys know, this isn't, I'm not just making my decisions based on my overall opinion or teams I like or don't like, or, or just based on what happened last week. Alrighty, so first game we're going to look at, we'll bring up the betting odds. So using Sportsbet here, because this is the one where we can see the head-to-head odds, the handicap, and the total points all in one. So New Orleans at Dallas. The Dallas Cowboys is their first home game of the season. They're $1.38 to win, -6.5 on the money line, and the totals is currently 46.5 points. Firstly, Dallas is just very, very hard to beat at home. You see here they've won 16 of their past 17 home games. So New Orleans, they're coming off a big win in week 1 at home against Carolina, 47 points to 10. However, Dallas also coming off a solid win against Cleveland, 33 points to 17. So both sides were very, very high scoring against lesser opposition in week 1, especially New Orleans. If we look at this matchup from their stats last season, both top 10 offenses, particularly the Cowboys, they were the #1 scoring side last season. Very strong in passing, and also they are about average in running the ball, but they're also the better defense in this matchup. So at home, you definitely expect Dallas to be winning this game. Now, when it comes to taking spreads, I want to say this right from like pretty much the beginning of the season, so you guys are aware of it. When it like betting spreads in the NFL, be very, very wary of laying too many points. Like, soon as you get to close to the double digits, you want to start being very, very selective with which teams that you want to take to lay that many points, because how the NFL kind of plays out a lot of the time is teams get out to substantial kind of leads. They might have a 10 or 14 point lead, and then they kind of run down the clock. They're not looking to score and put another, touchdown on the board. It becomes a lot of clock management. And then when they punt the ball away, for example, when there's 2 minutes left or 2.5 minutes left, that other team is going all out, rushing the clock, passing the ball, going for big plays to try and close the margin, get it back to a 1-score game, and give themselves a chance to potentially tie it or win it right at the end. And that leads to a lot of games where you think you're going to cover the -6.5 or -9.5 because the team's leading by 10 with 2 minutes to go. However, they'll give up a field goal or a soft touchdown with little time remaining, and then the cover goes out the window. So I'm very cautious of taking anything around a touchdown or more. No issue pretty much at all taking the -2.5 or -3 around that field goal range. However, once we get to bigger spreads, I'm always looking for other ways to play it, as over the years, so for the past 4 to 5 years is something I've done. But prior to that, when I was betting on the NFL, that was something that I got burnt a lot on, where you're in that winning position and then it eventually goes the opposite way. But for this game, I definitely think Dallas are going to be winning. I do think it's also going to be a higher scoring game. Both these sides are capable of scoring. Dallas slightly more, but I think it's going to be a higher scoring game. So I'd be leaning towards the Cowboys winning, and then also towards the overs, potentially buy that number down from the 46.5 down to closer to 40. And then from a player prop perspective, we look here. New Orleans defend wide receivers pretty well, don't defend tight ends all that great. But I think with Dallas's passing attack, we can definitely look to target CeeDee Lamb here for passing yards. You can see overall over the past all of last season and in week 1 this season, he had 61 yards receiving. He generates 50 plus in 83% of games, 60 plus receiving yards in 67%, and 70 plus in 61% of games. So generally, majority of games, he does get high numbers. This is probably going to be a high scoring game, and which is going to generate a lot of passing yards. So I feel like he's going to be the player that is most likely to capitalize on that. So that's how I'm looking at playing the New Orleans Saints Dallas Cowboys game. Then we have the Tampa Bay at Detroit Lions. This is a pretty good game. Detroit, a big favorite, $1.26, -7.5 on the handicap. And the total is 51.5 points. Slight move towards the under. Now, for this matchup, there's quite a number of ways that I've contemplated. At this stage, haven't 100% decided which way I'm going to play it. I feel like Tampa Bay, who put up 37 points against Washington at home in week 1, shouldn't have too many issues scoring points against Detroit, who did win in overtime last week at home against the LA Rams. They were behind, tied it up, and then scored the game-winning touchdown to win 26 points to 20. Detroit, very hard to beat at home. They've won 9 of their past 10. These sides last met in on the 21st of January, so towards the end of last season, and Detroit won that game 31 points to 23. They also won the game in 2023 against Tampa Bay. So I feel like they're going to get the job done, but I don't think it's going to be like a massive blowout. They might win by 10 points to 14 points at absolute most, but I don't see them, winning by more than that. So I think Tampa Bay can keep it somewhat close. Also, this is another game. There's not too many on the board where I like the overs, but these first two, I feel like of all of them are more likely to be ones that are going to be higher scoring. We'll bring up the Tampa Bay matchup. Here we go. So Detroit last season were a top 5 offense in passing and the number 1 rushing side. So that's going to be very, very hard for Tampa Bay to stop, especially in the air. So I think a few of the Detroit receivers are going to have pretty good games, especially considering Tampa were one of the worst wide receiver defensive units last season. So if we bring up the receivers here for Detroit, you have Brown and Williams. Williams had 121 receiving yards last week, and I think he's going to have another big game. And then St. Brown is probably going to have a big game as well, in what's going to be like another higher scoring game. So I do like both of those players to generate the close to the 40 plus and 50 plus receiving yards, and also to be a high scoring game. So they're probably the 3 selections. Baker Mayfield is another selection I did look at. For him to generate 200 plus passing yards, so that's 72% overall over the past year. And only 5 games where he hasn't achieved that number. But overall, that's not a game I'm super keen on. There's definitely some other ones that I really like. Then next game on the board, Cleveland at Jacksonville. So Jacksonville, 3-point favorites here, $1.56, and the total is 41.5 points for this game. Cleveland lost their opening game at home to Dallas, 33 points to 17, and Miami. Jacksonville lost to Miami 20 points to 17, where they had a big lead in that game, but let it slip away. This is a game I'm not super keen on betting into. I do think Cleveland keep it close. So the way I'm kind of looking at this game is taking Cleveland and buying it up towards the touchdown mark, so plus 7.5, and then taking the unders here at around the under 45.5 mark. So kind of playing both alternate lines on both of these games. So here we have the Cleveland Jacksonville game. Jacksonville offensively not that strong. Cleveland a really strong defensive side, which I think is going to keep them well and truly in this game. And they are definitely a big chance of winning. Jacksonville's offense just really dropped away, and Miami haven't really franked that form, like losing in convincing fashion against Buffalo, on Friday. So definitely like Cleveland to keep this game close, potentially win, and it also to go under the total points line. So a pretty simple game. Don't think this is one you have to really overthink that much. A lot of the key factors point towards that being the overall outcome. San Francisco at Minnesota, the 49ers, $1.45, minus 4.5, and the total's 46.5. This matchup, currently when I had a look, Christian McCaffrey is not expected to play. And as you can see, he's not in the touchdown scorer markets. Think regardless though, Jordan Mason did a really good job last week when coming into the team. And that was against the New York Jets, where the 49ers racked up 32 points. Minnesota had a convincing win as well on the road, 28 points to 6 against the New York Giants. This is their first home game of the season. So they'll want to obviously put in a big performance at home. There's a number of ways I want to play this game, and it kind of centers around the 49ers to be winning. I think they're going to be too good, but it's probably not the strongest way I want to play. But the reason why I do think they're going to win is the Vikings should struggle to run the ball. This is like They're a side who relies heavily on the run, yet the 49ers are the best rushing defense in the league. The Vikings definitely rely heavily on Aaron Jones to put up big numbers. However, against this 49ers defense, I think he's going to have a below average week. So you potentially look at his under, but with the form he's been in towards the end of last season, I don't think, it's a bet that you it's like, there's a few things against it where you don't want to take it, but it's definitely not the worst betting situation of all time. But I like the 49ers to win. And I also like Deebo Samuel to have a big game here. Minnesota don't defend wide receivers very well at all, and he's playing in really good form. Had 54 yards in week 1, and overall on the season had 25 plus receiving yards in 81% of games and 40 plus in 69%. Also, definitely like him to have a touchdown since the bye. So in week 9, when the 49ers had their bye last season, he scored a touchdown in all but 3 games, so in 7 of 10 games, and a total of 10 touchdowns during that time. Scores a touchdown in 56% of games, and I think he can find one here against this Vikings defense. So he'll be a potential touchdown scorer bet. Also like his receiving yards for him to have a big game. So they're the kind of 3 angles that I'm looking at there with the San Francisco-Minnesota game. Next, we have the LA Chargers at Carolina. The Chargers, $1.41, minus 4.5, and total at 38.5. Carolina are like one of the worst teams in the NFL. They've lost 10 of their past 11 games, only managed 10 points in week 1 and conceded 47 against New Orleans. And then the Chargers, really restricted Las Vegas. They're underdogs for this game. Restricted Las Vegas really well to win that 22 points to 10. Realistically, they should be winning this game. The Chargers have a lot of advantage here with the running game. We scroll down to the Carolina defense. Last season, they were the worst gave up the most opponent rushing touchdowns, 23rd most rushing yards, and 4.1 yards per attempt. So the Chargers should have no issue running the ball. They kind of have a 2-pronged attack here with their running backs in J.K. Dobbins and Gus Edwards. So I feel like they're going to be using both of those players. Definitely like Dobbins to have 40 plus rushing yards and the Chargers to be winning this game. That's most likely how I'm going to be playing it. And I feel like both of those sides should be hitting in this game. So be very surprised if Carolina can get themselves up to win a game here. Even though it's at home, that gives them a slight advantage, and it is an early game on the East Coast. So it's not an ideal situation for the Chargers, but I think they can capitalize and build on their week 1 win. They lost back in 2020 against Carolina. So, there's that bit of motivation there for them to be winning this game. They've also lost the last 3 against them. However, in the NFL, I'm not really worried about head-to-head performance with teams, because these sides don't, unless it's a divisional matchup, then they play each other every season. But outside of that, besides, only play each other every 4 years or so. So it's not like, well, they played, 6 months ago or a year ago, and this is what happened, how the team's changed since then. It's very, very different. So Chargers to win, and going with J.K. Dobbins to have a big game on the ground with the run game there for the Chargers. Then we have Seattle at New England. The Seahawks are $1.57 favorites, minus 3.5. And we've got a low total here again at 38.5 points. This is not a game I really want to get too involved in betting into. The Seahawks beat Denver at home in week 1, and then the Patriots beat Cincinnati in pretty much probably the biggest upset of week 1, keeping the Bengals to just 10 points and running out winners by 6 in that game. This one, I feel like it's going to be a low scoring game. We're getting such a low number, so it's not one I really want to bet, but at 38.5, I'd be leaning towards the under. Both these sides are going to be very, very defensive minded. And when that happens, it generally becomes an unders game, but it's not a number I want to take. If I was getting over 40, then I'd probably happily take the under, but not at that number. So that's probably going to be a game that I'm going to leave alone. And this is the advantage we have as the bettors is we don't have to bet into every single game. We can pick and choose, which situations we want to bet into and find the ones that best favor us. So coming up, we got a few really good situations I want to take advantage of. Las Vegas at Baltimore. Baltimore $1.23 minus 9.5, and the total is 41.5. Las Vegas were really poor against the Chargers in week 1, and Baltimore dropped week 1 on the road against Kansas City. Tried to tie the game. They caught the ball in the end zone right on the final siren. However, the receiver's toe was just over the line. So Baltimore didn't get the opportunity to go for 2, which they're preparing to do when that catch was overturned. They'll be keen to post a win here, and I don't think they'll have any issue at all accounting for Las Vegas. They're pretty short, $1.23, but this is a game they should be winning and should be winning very, very comfortably. Looking at the matchup between these sides, you've got top 5 offense against a bottom 10 offense. Las Vegas struggled to run and throw the ball, so I can't really see them having a big game whatsoever. Defensively, they're a poor rushing defense, and Baltimore should make plenty of yards on the ground here with both Derrick Henry and Lamar Jackson. Realistically, they shouldn't have any issue at all generating first downs. I suspect a lot of their drives they'll score on and will run out comfortable winners of this game. I don't really want to take the minus 9.5, even though I do think they'll probably cover it. But I'm going to take advantage of this poor Las Vegas defense versus running backs. So Derrick Henry playing running back there for Baltimore. I'm going to take him to generate 40+ rushing yards. Probably could take him to generate more than that as well. I think he'll likely have a big game as long as he gets enough usage. Definitely 40+, 72% of games over the past year. And then also Lamar Jackson, 25+ rushing yards. If you pair up those 3 with Baltimore to win, it pays close to even money. So I feel like it's a really good betting proposition. With Lamar Jackson on the ground, he goes at 25+ in 94% of games. Only missed it once in week 8 last season, where he had 17 rushing yards, coming off 122 against Kansas City last week. Against Las Vegas, I think he'll have another big game. So they're the 2 that I'm going to go with. Also, I really like Derrick Henry to score a touchdown in this game. Across his past 2 games against Las Vegas, he scored 3 touchdowns. So 1 in each of those games. And overall, since week 12 last season, so across those 8 games, he scored at least 1 touchdown in 6 of them and scores 1 in 56% of games. So I can definitely see him getting 1 against the Raiders tomorrow. So that's a game I'm really, really keen on. Then we have Indianapolis at Green Bay. The Colts, $1.69 minus 2.5, total at 40.5. I'm a little bit wary of this game, just thinking well, Jordan Love's out for the Packers. That means Indianapolis have to be the bet. They just missed last week at home against Houston, losing by 2 points. And the Packers coming off a loss down in Brazil against Philadelphia. They get extended rest coming into this. That gives them a slight advantage. However, they're going to be without their number 1 quarterback for this game. Looking at these 2 teams' performances, I think Indianapolis can control this game on the ground. If you notice here, the Packers concede a lot of yards to opponent running backs, ranked 23rd in the league in yards per attempt and 27th in rushing yards per game to opponent running backs. So I do think this game is going to be controlled on the ground, with that being the weakness for both sides. And so based on that, there's a couple of plays that I want to have. You'll also notice as well, we're on this page that the Packers give up the 28th most rushing yards per game to opponent quarterbacks, and they're also ranked 30th in quarterback rushing yards per attempt against the opponent. So this number combined with this number, sets up really, really well. So for Indianapolis, the 2 players that we want to target, we'll come back up and find the game here. So firstly, Anthony Richardson, who plays quarterback there for the Colts. He had 56 rushing yards in week number 1 and averages over the past year 38.4. So I'm going to take him to get 25 plus, which he's hit in 80% of games. So 5 total games, he's hit it in 4 of those. And then Jonathan Taylor to get 60 plus rushing yards. So that's why we're looking at receivers. We'll come back up here. And he had 48 in week 1, but this is definitely a much easier matchup. 60 plus he's hit in 55% of games over the past year. And, since week 7, he had a couple of low games in week 5, week 6, after missing the first 4 games. And, outside of that, he's pretty much hit over 40 in all of those. So in this situation, especially if Indianapolis do get an early lead, they'll be relying on the run, which he'll be able to definitely get over those 60 yards. I also like Taylor to score a touchdown in this game. He scored in his past 7 games. And also scored in 8 of his past 9. So 73% of games he's played in, he's been able to get over for a touchdown. You also have Richardson, who scored a touchdown in 4 of his 5 games as well, but definitely prefer taking Jonathan Taylor to be the touchdown scorer at least one time for Indianapolis. So that's how I'm going to be looking at the props for that game. I feel like the prop situations are better than, taking the Colts to win, where I do kind of feel like it's a little bit trappy. I prefer looking at them to control the game on the ground. The New York Jets at Tennessee. The Jets, $1.50 minus 3.5 total, 41.5. I feel like this is a little bit of a trappy game. Be interesting to see how the Jets perform here. They're coming off disappointing loss, I guess, for them against San Francisco. I think they would have thought they would have been able to give the 49ers a bit more of a game, especially without McCaffrey playing for them. However, 49ers dominated that matchup. Aaron Rodgers didn't really have the best game. I think he's going to have a better game this week. And then Tennessee pretty much blew their game against Chicago, so they'll be keen to bounce back as well with their first home game. The issue as well with the Jets, this is back-to-back road games for them to start the season, so it's hardly an ideal situation for them. So I don't want to get involved with them from a head-to-head perspective. And also don't really want to be backing Jets to be making meters on the ground, or yards on the ground here, I should say. Bring up this matchup. The Titans are pretty solid run defense, and where they are weak is in the wide receiver position. So this is where, on the back of Aaron Rodgers, he can target his receivers in this game. And if we come down to bring up the receivers for the New York Jets and look at particularly the wide receivers, you have Garrett Wilson, Mike Williams, and Lazard. Lazard had 89 yards in week number 1. I think he's going to have a big game. So I feel like he's the receiver to target with any prop bets in this matchup. Didn't really have a great last season. However, New York didn't have Rodgers playing quarterback for last season. So with him back, he's going to be the one that Rodgers does look to target in this game. But you could play Lazard or Williams. I feel like either of those would be good options, but personally do like Lazard's receiving overs. Final early game, we have the New York Giants at Washington. So divisional matchup here. Washington, small favorites at $1.78 minus 1.5. Total is 43.5. No real major interest at all in this game either. I feel like this is one that definitely could be going either way. New York won both games in this matchup last season, 31-19. Put in a big fourth quarter, 17-7 to win that game, and then a low scoring game, 14 points to 7 there. Both sides coming off kind of disappointing losses to start the season. This is a game where you can kind of use it to see where these teams are really at. Don't get as good of an indication, when they're versing, either a lot better teams. So potentially they are fairly even, and we can kind of see where they're at. I think Washington at home are deserving to be favorites, but I wouldn't definitely want to be backing them as favorites. From a player prop perspective in the Giants-Washington game, you can definitely target the New York Giants wide receivers. Washington were the worst defense last season against wide receivers. They gave up the most overall yards per game and the most yards per reception, also the second most wide receiver touchdown. So New York, didn't score a touchdown in week one. So packing like one of their receivers to get a touchdown here, not really a great bet, but I think you can definitely look at them for their yards. Sometimes it can only take one big play to generate enough yards because the lines for them are pretty low. So if anything, I was going to bet in that game, that's the angle I'd be looking at. Also, Washington do give up a high number of passing yards. It's not, a very tough passing matchup for them either. Then the late afternoon games, the LA Rams against Arizona. Not a great deal between them. Arizona currently very small favorites, $1.90 to $1.94, -1.5, but it's juiced towards the Rams side because of what the head-to-head odds are. And then the total for this game is 47.5 points. For this game, like kind of history between the two sides says that the Rams should be winning. They have a very good record against Arizona. Sean McVay, the coach of the LA Rams, is 11-2 against the spread versus Arizona. And the Cardinals quarterback, Kyler Murray, is 1-7 head-to-head against the Rams. So it's not like all those kind of things point to the Rams winning this game. However, don't think there's a great deal between them. Arizona were pretty good, like definitely exceeded expectations in week one against Buffalo on the road. Now they're back at home. Whereas the Rams back-to-back road games is not an ideal situation for them at all. I don't think there's going to be a great deal between these two sides. You could definitely look at the try bets, like either side to win by a touchdown or less. That's probably the most highest percentage betting angle in this game, and the one that I'd be most considering betting into if I was to take a side. Not sure at this stage if this is a game that I want to be betting into. But yeah, I think this one's going to be close either way. LA have the historical advantage. Arizona were the slightly better side in week one against better opposition. And, Buffalo definitely franked that form with a big win against Miami. So slight lean, if I had to take a side towards the Cardinals, but can't take them with confidence. Just don't like when teams have such bad records against sides. Cincinnati on the road against Kansas City. The Chiefs, $1.38, -5.5 and 47.5 points. The Chiefs should be winning this game. Like Baltimore were terrible at home in week one against the Patriots. That's a game they should have been winning and just looked terrible offensively, and then conceded 16 points against a New England offense, which is down there with bottom 2 or 3 in the league. So now to go on the road against Kansas City is as tough as it gets. And the only reason I'm somewhat confused is I did expect Kansas City to be bigger favorites. Honestly, I'm not surprised they're not $1.20 and close to 10-point favorites for this game. So that's the only thing that scares me a little bit, but I really don't see any way Kansas City lose this game. They took care of Baltimore in week one at home, back-to-back home games to start the season. They'll be keen to start the year 2-0 and set themselves up really, really well. I'd personally probably buy this down to -2.5 to be safe, but no real issue taking anything up to a touchdown. Joe Burrow really didn't have a good game. There's obviously reports, whether he's playing injured with a wrist injury. Either way, they're going to have to play a hell of a lot better to be beating Kansas City. Also, with the Chiefs here, Cincinnati are the worst pass defense against tight ends. You see the most yards per game, and also opponents do target that position a lot against them, but the yards per reception is ranked 25th in the league. So for this game, Travis Kelce plays tight end for the Chiefs. I think he's going to get good opportunities in this game. For him, 25 plus receiving yards, 88% over the past year, only missing it twice in week 9 before the bye, and then week 17 before he was rested for the last game of the season. Had 34 in week 1, and I think he cleared 25 plus comfortably in this game. And with Kansas City to win and Kelce 25 plus, should be really good. Mahomes to throw a touchdown is probably another good betting opportunity. However, there's not a great deal of odds in it, and he generally, over the past 6 games, he's only thrown more than one in one game across those past 6. But I think, Kansas City will win this game and win it comfortably. And I feel like just at this stage of the season, it's not one you really need to overthink too much. Pittsburgh at Denver. Pittsburgh favorites here $1.69 minus 2.5. Total 36.5. So super low total. Personally, I have no interest in betting this game. Both sides were okay without being great. Pittsburgh are favorites. They're coming off a win against Atlanta in a low scoring game, back-to-back road games for them. Denver coming off a close loss against Seattle, losing 26 points to 20. Pittsburgh are a side that don't really ever care to back as a favorite, so I'm not going to be doing that, and especially in this situation. Looking at, they haven't played since 2021. Pittsburgh won that game. They've also won the past two against Denver. I'd expect them to be winning, but as I said, don't want to back them as a favorite. The late games are this Sunday night football game played in Monday afternoon here in Australia. Chicago at Houston. Houston 6.5 point favorites, so $1.35 on the money line, and the total is 45.5 points. I like Houston to win this game. I think they're too good for Chicago. The Chicago's offense still kind of has a lot of issues and still kind of working out. They don't really play that well on the road either. And Houston, coming off a road win against Indianapolis, now back at home, should be winning and are a good enough team to win this game. They should get the job done. For a prop perspective, I do like a touchdown scorer in this game. Chicago concede the 23rd most running back touchdowns to the opposition. They also, so if we bring up the touchdown scorers, Joe Mixon is the running back for Houston, and he has scored a touchdown since the bye in week 7. He has scored a touchdown in 10 of 12 games. He had one in week 1, and it's a total of 12 touchdowns during that time. So scoring a touchdown in 61% of games against the side who he should get plenty of opportunities to do that. I like him to score a touchdown. And then the final game so this is the Monday night game, so Tuesday here in Australia. Atlanta at Philadelphia. Philadelphia $1.36 minus 6.5 on the handicap, and total is 46.5 points. Atlanta were really poor at home in week 1 against Pittsburgh. You'll obviously get an indication on how Pittsburgh have performed in their game against Denver. If they come out and lose that game, well, then that form looks even worse. If they win, then it doesn't look as bad, but there's just Atlanta, should have been winning that game and didn't. And then Philadelphia ran out winners against Green Bay. The Packers obviously lost Jordan Love in that game, but Philadelphia still got the win 34-29. I think they should have no issue taking care of Atlanta. They're clearly the better side, both sides of the ball. Philadelphia's defense is a little bit iffy. It did concede 29 points last week, but that really shouldn't matter against Atlanta, who only scored 10 points against Pittsburgh last week. I think, Pittsburgh's a better, probably a lot better defense than Philadelphia, but Philadelphia have the offense to run up a much bigger score than Pittsburgh were able to do. If we look at how these sides match up, Atlanta give up a lot of QB rushing to the opposition. And against Jalen Hurts, he'll definitely be taking full advantage of that for his rushing yards. He had 33 in week 1. Atlanta gave up, I think, 57 from memory to Justin Fields in week 1. So they're already, giving up plenty again this season. Jalen Hurts had 25 plus in 78% of games last season. Obviously, you can kind of discount week 18 as that doesn't really matter too much, and in a lot of the other games was generating high numbers, and I think he'll definitely get to the 25 plus. So Philly to win and Hurts to get 25 plus rushing yards. You could also potentially take him at a high number, but I feel like that's the slightly safer bet. And for the most part, when it comes to betting on the NFL, I'm looking for bets in that $1.70 to $2.20 range, and then winning that around the 60% of bets, so high 50s to 60s. When you're taking longer odds, you obviously can win less bets to still be profitable. When you're taking shorter odds, you need to win a higher percentage of bets. But you want to make sure that you're not just, taking longer odds just because you want to win more from that particular bet. It's more important to have a bet that you're more confident is going to win and the selections match up, as opposed to taking a selection just because it's higher odds. And all this comes back to positive expected value and the price that you're willing to take. But that's definitely a topic for another video. If you like videos like this, then definitely make sure you subscribe to the channel so you're notified when additional videos come out right throughout the season. I'm going to be posting lots of statistical content on the NFL to help make sure you're making really good betting decisions. And as we come into the NBA, NHL seasons as well, there's going to be videos coming up for them. And I'm going to aim to post a few MLB videos each week so you can lock in some good bets on the MLB. So thanks for watching. Really appreciate you guys doing this. Hopefully this video has helped you with your decision-making process for the NFL this weekend. And also over the next few weeks, as we get in the data for how teams are performing this year, I'm going to bring in some more prop analysis and also some more touchdown scorer analysis so we can find really good bets on those markets as well. Thanks guys for watching, and I'll talk to you soon.